Hey, what is going on everyone, it's Flameokalava here, and finally, after all of these years, Metroid Dread is here. Who would have seen the day? Metroid Dread was a game originally planned to release for the Nintendo DS, and was eventually lost in time. However, with the Nintendo Switch, Sakamoto's idea finally came to fruition with the release of this game, after 16 years. So in today's video, I'll be reviewing Metroid Dread, the brand new 2D Metroid game released for the Nintendo Switch. Now the video will contain a few spoilers, however, keep watching this as I'll be giving a story spoiler warning when talking about the story for the game. So I'll be talking about the gameplay without any spoilers and whatnot. So without further ado, let's just jump straight into my review for Metroid Dread. So, the infamous Metroid Dread. After 19 years, a brand new 2D Metroid game released, continuing the story of Metroid Fusion for the Game Boy Advance, and it's none other than Metroid Dread, the so-called cancelled Metroid game. Anyways, so let's start off with, of course, the gameplay of Metroid Dread. And wow, it's a huge step up from the series as well as a big step up from Fusion. Samus's moveset does have some classic moves from the series, however there are tons of new moves and even some returning ones from Samus Returns on the 3DS, such as the counter, which is just such a great move. Not only is Samus's moveset extremely versatile, with tons of different power-ups you can acquire in the game, but in terms of the controls for her, she controls extremely great and smooth. I did have a slight concern with how this game is going to control, because older Metroid games haven't exactly had the best moveset for Samus with so many power-ups. However, Samus in Metroid Dread has extremely great and smooth controls. Everything here works extremely well. This also complements with the overall graphics and how the game runs, so let's go ahead and talk about that. And Metroid Dread runs extremely well on the Switch hardware. Nowadays, a lot of Nintendo Switch games don't exactly run the best on the console, and yes, I'm looking at you, Age of Calamity, due to of course the outdated hardware of the console. However, because Dread pretty much uses the same engine that Mercury Steam used for Samus Returns, it runs extremely well and smoothly. The graphics in general look incredible, but most of the time, this game runs at a smooth 60 FPS. There is a frame rate drop here and there, but for most of the time, the game runs great. Even with my testing of this game in handheld mode, it ran and looked extremely good on the Switch, and I'm using the base Switch, not the OLED. This really reminded me of a lot of the graphics for Luigi's Mansion 3, as that game had some fantastic graphics as well on the Switch. Continuing on with the gameplay for Dread, the areas to explore are also really well made. Each area to explore was great with some good level design and tons of secrets to get like in other Metroid games. I also love how you could really get to freely explore the game at your own pace, without the game literally telling you where to go like in Metroid Fusion. Metroid Fusion was a pretty linear game, as Adam always told you where to go on the map. However, with Dread, he only really acts as someone to really give you a hint, whilst the player can freely explore each area of the game. Another big new addition with the gameplay for Dread are of course the Emmy, the main enemy advertised for this game. The way the Emmy work is that they chase down Samus whenever they detect her nearby. I originally thought that the way the Emmy worked is that they would chase you anywhere, with the player exploring. However, they made it work a lot better by having the Emmy only locked behind to the Emmy areas. The Emmy areas are areas on the map where if you enter them, an Emmy is present within the area, and you need to essentially make it out to whatever exit you need without trying to get spotted by them. There are barely any other enemies, however there are objects and things placed to make it so that it's easier for the Emmy to detect you. I love how this feature works. Essentially, if an Emmy catches you, then it's almost instant death. However, there's a small chance that you can actually escape. It really makes going through the Emmy area sort of scary as you start panicking where the Emmy chases you, which I absolutely love. The Emmy remind me of how SRX worked in Metroid Fusion, but this time around they actually play a bigger part within the game. Not only that, but there are 7 different types of Emmy, with each of them having different stats, such as the yellow Emmy being extremely fast. This really differentiates and adds to how much the Emmy work within the games. Next up, I would like to touch upon the difficulty of the game. Now, Metroid games are usually known for being pretty difficult, and Dread definitely lives up to it. I feel that Metroid Fusion was a little bit more difficult, but that's probably due to its controls. However, don't take that too lightly, as Dread is still a pretty difficult game at times. The bosses in the game are all great, and there were numerous times where I was stuck on some boss fights playing the game normally. Even after beating the game, you do get a little bit more of a difficult mode unlocked, so if you want to challenge yourself even more, then here you go. Finally, before I talk about the story, I would just like to touch upon Metroid Dread's soundtrack. And if I'm being serious, the soundtrack is a little bit disappointing. Don't get me wrong, there are some great tracks in the game, but a lot of them don't really feel that memorable to me. However, there are still some good tracks here and there. So next up, let's talk about the story. Now, spoiler warning, if you don't want to get spoiled, then skip this part of the video where I'll be talking about my overall thoughts of the game. So I'll give you guys a few seconds to skip on ahead. Okay, so Metroid Dread begins after the events of Metroid Fusion, with Samus exploring the unknown planet ZDR, as she finds a mysterious video of an X-Parasite seen on the planet. Now, what I love about the opening of the game is that it gives the player his side of information on the story of the series so far. Whilst it isn't anything huge, it does a decent job at explaining the story, since this is a lot of people's first Metroid game. After that, however, the story only really picks up halfway through the game, and the X-Parasite end up coming back, which really gave me a lot of Fusion vibes. And then finally, the ending was huge. Not only did we get revealed that Raven Beak is in fact Samus' father, but the Metroid suit Samus gets at the end of the game looks so sick. Overall, Dread's story is extremely great, and it was a pleasure for Metroid fans. So overall, Metroid Dread is easily one of my favorite Nintendo Switch games, and is possibly my game of the year for this year. The controls and gameplay are both phenomenal, and the game runs and feels extremely well. The story is also such a great continuation from Fusion, with an insane ending that honestly makes us feel like a love letter to Metroid fans. So overall, I give Metroid Dread a 9 out of 10. If you are interested in this gameplay, then I 100% cannot recommend this game enough. Mercury's team did an excellent job with this game. So yeah, that is today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, then please do leave a like, subscribe, follow me on all my social medias and whatnot, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.